it is 2 o'clock. So,
excellent. I will go
welcome
ahead and
to everyone here. This is Navigating the M365 Compliance Center. And we want to first, before we begin, thank our silver sponsors. So let's hear a little message from one of them right now. So I am going to share that video with you. And remember to include computer sound.
Yep.
Always remember that. And there we go.
At Smarter Consulting, we believe in making technology available to everyone. And that's why you can count on us for your technology solutions and your team's training needs, from SharePoint to OneNote, Teams, or any of the Microsoft 365 applications. Or maybe you need a technology assessment before committing your budget. In fact, our application audit saved one customer more than $1 million in software expenses. Smarter Consulting is here to help you. We collaborate with the industry's best providers to bring our clients customized solutions that address their unique challenges. While we're based in Kansas City, also known as the heart of the Silicon Prairie, we've helped clients all over the country. Let's chat about how we can help you. Send us a note at info@smarter-consulting.com.
All right. Thank you again to our silver sponsors. We could not run this without you. And with that, take it away, Peter.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you indeed to the fabulous sponsors. Fantastic. So, switch over to my presentation and let's get going on a taste of M365 Chicago. My name's Peter Rising, and this session is going to be on navigating the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. A great topic for a Friday, I think. Hopefully it'll not put you to sleep. Briefly, a little bit about me. My name is Peter Rising. As I said, I'm a Microsoft MVP. Here's some ways that you can reach me. I'm on Twitter as M365 Rising, LinkedIn as Peter Rising. I'm on the Microsoft Tech community, and there's some links to a couple of the exam guide books that I've authored and co-authored on MS500 and MS700. So, this presentation, we're not going to have too many slides because the title sort of gives it away, Navigating the Compliance Center. So we're going to dive into the demo quite quickly. So we're going to have a very, very quick couple of slides and then have a test drive around the compliance centers. But here we go on this slide. We've got the old versus the new. So previously there was the combined, and it's still there, in fact, the combined security and compliance center, which you could reach by going to https://protection.office.com. And the new is compliance.microsoft.com. As the old center sort of gives away, there is also now a dedicated security center as well, which is inventively named security.microsoft.com. But we're here to talk about compliance today and all the wonderful features within. So, what are the key compliance features? What are some of the things we might look at as we drive around the compliance center? Well, we'll take a look at how data loss prevention is and looks in there, along with things like retention labels and retention policies. And retention policies is so nice. I've put it in twice. Sensitivity labels and policies as well. Things like built-in sensitive information types that you can use with DLP and other features of M365. And maybe a little bit about content search, core e-discovery and advanced e-discovery. So there's a lot to cover. We'll jump around and see what we can get through. But the aim is not to go too deep, but to give you an awareness just of what's in there, how to navigate around, and what sort of stuff you've got. And that really is it in terms of the slides. So on to our demo. So let's just toggle across to my demo tenant. This is a typical Contoso demo tenant with the full E5 capabilities. I'm logged in as the MOD administrator, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. And I've navigated it here by going to compliance.microsoft.com, and this gets me into the home page of the Compliance Center. Now, to get here, you do need to have privileged rights. I'm logged in as a global administrator, but there are other roles that can get you there as well: compliance admin and security admin and so on and so forth. But this is where that will get you to. The other tab that I have open, in case we want to just make some comparisons as we go along, is the older Security and Compliance Center, which many of you might be more familiar with. I know certainly I was someone who resisted this move to the separate compliance centers for quite a long time. I didn't want to give this up. I was comfortable with this. I knew what I was doing with this, and everything was where I wanted it to be and familiar. And then all of a sudden we get Microsoft pushing us to these new homes for managing security and compliance, dedicated security center and compliance center, and I don't want to do that. Why they're separating it out? But as usual, Microsoft were right, and I was wrong. And over time, I've grown to appreciate why that was a necessary decision, because there's so much in each pillar of security and compliance as separate entities that it really did need those separate entities. So what that means for this security and compliance combined portal in time, who knows? I don't think there's anything on the roadmap to specifically retire it. Does it even say here? I don't know if it does, but I think it's still here for now. But more and more, as you go into some of the features in here, you'll be directed to use the new ones. So let's go back into the Compliance Center itself. What have we got in here as compliance administrators? What sort of tools are available to them on a day-to-day basis? When we go in, we get right into the home page here, and you get let's just unclick that. This lovely welcome here with just a very quick intro on what this is all about. So it's your home for managing compliance needs using integrated solutions for information protection, information governance, insider risk management, discovery, and more. And as you go through all of the Microsoft 365 admin centers, and there are many of them, as I'm sure you will be aware, you quite often get these links here to learn more, and these are really good. These will take you, when you click on them, or they'll open another tab into the docs.microsoft.com documentation. And these are, I advise you very, very strongly to look at these areas, because it gives you a lot of rich information about what you're going to get from these compliance centers, and it will help you to understand them more. So, and it gives you steps to get started. If you're not sure, if you're new to compliance, if you're new to Microsoft 365, either or, then it's going to guide you through what you need to do to help you explore the new and improved tools for your data and compliance needs. Assess and improve your compliance posture with Compliance Manager, which is one of the categories here in the left-hand rail. We can explore the catalog to discover and start using compliance and risk management features. The catalog is down here under the Solution Center, so it's going to give you quick sort of tips as to sort of things that you can do. And then there's the feedback there as well. If you want to get more involved, which is always great, then Microsoft are really invested in developing this one-stop shop to be the place to go for compliance needs across Microsoft 365. So you can join the Office Insider programs to preview and review the latest enhancements and leave feedback. So always worth doing. There's also a handy link here to what's new as well. This is really, really cool. If you click on this what's new, we get into another docs.microsoft.com page where we can see what is new in Microsoft Compliance, what's being added in month by month and feature by feature, and we can see the latest advancements in advanced discovery and data classification, DLP, sensitivity labels, and Microsoft are changing this all the time, making improvements to make life easier for compliance administrators. So highly recommend you you look at these regularly and bookmark them or go to them from here. So this homepage is also made up of cards. These are called cards, and these are basically shortcut tiles to the quick and easy shortcut tiles to the features that you'll find down the left-hand rail there. And you can remove and those to your needs and take them in, take them out. But I'll be honest, I tend to not ever look at this homepage, I know what I'm looking for and which menu I need to get to, but that's just a way of working really at the end of the day, and you'll find your own ways and what works best for you. But what you can do with these cards, you can delete them, you can add them back in. I mean, they're all present at the moment, so I can't add any more. So you can't customize cards, so you can take them out and add them back. So that's the home page, and very helpful it is too. Now, what you can do as well, you can collapse this navigation if you want to get a full screen look at any of the sections that we're going to have a look at in the Compliance Center. So let's start with Compliance Manager. What is Compliance Manager? This is a portal which is going to measure your progress in completing actions that help reduce risks around data protection, regulatory standards, and all that good stuff. So you can modify your Compliance Manager settings here as well. So there's some automated testing settings that you can manipulate. It's going to go ahead and check the current setup, and you can make some selections here to turn on all improvement actions, or turn off all improvement actions, or turn on per improvement actions. So if you select that one, you can be quite granular in the improvement actions that you want to save and select. And there's some user history settings in there as well. And I have not closed my email, naughty me. Okay, so let's go back to the Compliance Manager. And not a great example, because this demo tenant has a compliance score of 0, so it's got a ways to go, shall we say. But let's just briefly switch over to, and we'll come back to this, to another tenant that I have, and I thought I had this open. Compliance.microsoft.com. This is my own actual demo tenant, my own lab tenant, shall we say, and this gives you a better feel for the compliance score in Compliance Manager. So let's just bring that up, and you'll get a better idea of what that's all about when it decides to load. Here we go. My compliance score at the moment is 74% in this tenant. And what does that mean? So I've got 12762 out of 17065 points achieved, which I think is pretty good. So how do you understand this? There's some great tips here on how compliance score measures your progress towards completing recommended actions that help to reduce the risks around your data protection and your regulatory standards. So you can click here and go to another link on how the compliance score calculations take place and how to read your compliance score. Very, very helpful stuff. And then we've got key improvement actions here. These are the really important improvement actions that have been called out for what you need to be looking at to make improvements. Just a highlighted view there. You can go to click on View All Improvement Actions there to see everything that's in there, or click on the shortcut at the top there on this tab here, and you can filter this down by category, by regulations and solutions. So if we drop down to regulations, we can filter between EU GDPR, data protection baseline, flick between solutions within Microsoft 365. We could just choose things like cloud app security if we wanted to, DLP, Exchange Online protection. There's a lot of great controls here of how we can filter that down, which is great. But here we can see there are some recommendations here for improvement actions that we can look at. So enforce multi-factor authentication, for example, always a good thing to have on any tenant, obviously. So here we get an overview of what this is. There's also a pending update to this improvement action here. So let's review that update and see what that is telling us. So review changes to the improvement action before accepting the update. Accepted updates are permanent. You can defer and accept later. So what are the change details? So assessments impacted, default group, EU, GDPR, or 365. So have a look at what these changes are, if any changes have taken place whilst you've been pending these recommendations. I'm happy with that, so I'll go ahead and accept those changes, and that little update review should go ahead and disappear there, and we should refresh, and hopefully reasonably quickly. Boom, 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 and there we go. So now that update status is gone, and here we've got a lot of actions we can take now. We can assign this update action to a particular person in the organization. So assign this action to a user. Assigned users will be sent an email notification. So we can look through our list of suggested people, go through and select who we want that action to be applied to. We can view implementation statuses of the update, implementation dates. We can look at testing statuses, standards and regulations, access control, identification, authentication, and documents. A lot of good stuff in here, and I encourage you to look at these improvement actions, and you get a lot of information about what they are, why they're being recommended, and how you can apply them, shall we say. So that's improvement actions. So solutions is the next item on the tab here, and here it gives you some information on how to recognize how solutions contribute to your score and their remaining opportunity for improvement. So here we can view solutions by category. So we can view by auditing, by Azure Active Directory, by Azure Information Protection, Cloud App Security, and all that good stuff, and see what the current score contribution is for these services within Microsoft 365, what the potential score and points are, what categories this belongs to, whether it's a discover and respond, control access, protect information. It gives you tons of information here about what this is all about and how it's going to apply to these services. So lots of very, very good information there. You can also run some assessments. If we go into the assessments tab here, we can add assessments to be completed. There are some existing assessments here already for, and these help you to implement data protection controls specified by compliance or security or privacy and data protection standards and regulations and laws. And you will apply these based on what's going to apply to you as a business, what's going to apply to you in terms of your internal policies that you have in your organization, or any industry standards that you are obliged to comply with. So we can see here we've got an EU, European Union GDPR for 365. We can go into that assessment and take a look and see what the status of that is and what our progress is in terms of achieving that. So we can see here this is 44% assessment progress there at the moment, and we've got some key improvement actions there and some nice little graphs there and controls to see how all that is progressing. So I'm deliberately sort of going through these quite quickly because we do have a lot to cover. So if it seems like I'm skipping through quite quickly, that's why. And there are some assessment templates there as well, which you can which you can apply as well. So that is the compliance manager. I'm going to switch back to the Contoso tenant now, actually, because it was just the compliance score that wasn't showing there, and there wasn't any real usable data in there. So compliance manager and compliance score, take a look at it, get to know what your improvement actions are recommended in your tenant, assign them to compliance administrators and managers, and go through them and work your way through, use the filters, use the assessments, look at the solutions, break them down by solutions, and these can be really helpful to you. So the next section that we're going to look at in the rail on the left is data classification. The first time you click on it, you get one of these lovely sort of explanatory menus saying, well, what is it? What is data classification? So this is about sensitivity and retention labels, sensitive info types, trainable classifiers. Data in the organization is classified in many ways, and there are just a few of them listed there already. And here we can see that the data classification features can help you gain insight into what's being classified, so you can set up the right policies to protect and govern. So if we take a closer look, explore classified content, monitor and review activity, and then we're into the actual data classification section. So we can get some snapshots here in this area about how sensitive info and labels are being used across your tenant, across your organization's locations. And when we're talking about locations, we're talking about services within Microsoft 365 like Exchange Online and OneDrive and SharePoint, and that's what we mean by a location. So here we can see the top sensitive info types broken down. So we can see credit card numbers, 51. We've got EU debit card numbers, 48, US bank account numbers, social security numbers, content broken down into the top sensitive info types. If you want to drill down a bit further, you can see a bit more detail there on how this is broken down in terms of numbers. And then as you go through, we can see that this is applying into Exchange, to OneDrive, to SharePoint. And if you click on these, you can actually, you need to grant permission. That's a very good point. By default, even as a global administrator, you do not have the permission to look at these reports in more detail without first assigning these permissions here: the Content Explorer List Viewer role and the Content Explorer Content Viewer role. And where you find those are in the Permissions tab. So we can take a look at those in a moment and show you the permissions that are available for not only compliance, but for Azure AD as well. But and we'll focus on those two particular ones that would get us into these more detail. Activity Explorer is the final section on the data classification tab. And we can review activity in here related to content that contains sensitive info or has labels applied. So anything that was matches that criteria would appear here, and we could filter that down and by date, by activity, by location. So user or sensitivity label, and search for that content to apply to the Activity Explorer. Just realized I have sort of glossed over. Yes, I've glossed over a few of these tabs at the top because I went directly into the sensitive information types, and that took me into Content Explorer. So let's just step back and we'll quickly have a look at the other tabs in the data classification section. You can see how easy it is when you get into the to any Microsoft 365 admin centers. When you get in there and click on somewhere to learn more, you can very easily end up in other places inadvertently. So, and there are multiple ways of getting to the same place a lot of the time. When you first start doing this, when you first go into the trainable classifiers here, you have to start a scanning process. The tenant will need to scan the content locations to generate some analytics to help learn what type of content you have. And it'll usually take around 7 to 14 days for this scanning to complete. So if you don't want to start the process now, you can still use the built-in classifiers today, of which there are many, but you can just set that off and wait for it to complete within its 7 to 14 days, and then you can check back on that. But what classifiers do, though, built-in or custom classifiers can be used to identify specific categories of content which are based on existing items in your organization. So once created, the classifiers can be used in several compliance solutions to detect related content, classify it and protect it, and more. So we can look for things like offensive language, profanity, and source code, targeted harassment, threats, that sort of thing. And there's lots of these built in. So if we take a look at some of the, hopefully this won't show us anything too offensive on but this detects a specific category of offensive language text which contains expressions that commonly embarrass people. And where are these going to be used? Well, these can be used with retention labels, and they will automatically apply retention labels to items matching this classifier. Communication compliance, which is another feature that we'll see a bit further down, uses this classifier as well to detect and review messages that might be considered abusive and offensive. And information protection as well can use the classifier to recommend or automatically label items opened in Office applications. Whenever you see that word automatic, by the way, as well, you should be mindful that automatic labeling is going to require an Azure Information Protection P2 or a E5 license, Microsoft 365 E5 license. So be mindful of your license obligations when it comes to things like auto labeling and in the Compliance Center. So that is trainable classifiers. Sensitive information types are a big deal. They are very, very important in the context of compliance, and there are many built in the Compliance Center. And in the older Security Compliance Center, you can find them in there as well. And you have things in here like content based on financial content, medical content, privacy, GDPR content, and you can search by region. And so if I go for u.s. we can filter the sensitive information types by US content here. We've got US-UK passport number, US bank account number. We can have a look at these and and see the description of what they are, what the confidence level is, what they do, and the proximities, and how they detect, what the supporting elements are. And you can create your own sensitive information types as well. Now, when you apply sensitive info types to things like DLP policies, usually the built-in ones will cover most organizations' needs, but there may be occasion where you have to create your own sensitive information type, custom one, and you can do that right here as well. Quite easily, you can put in custom type, always put a description in. In this case, it forces you to, with the little asterisks there, and then you can go through and create patterns to match the confidence level and the elements that you want, the proximity, supporting elements, and that sort of thing. So we'll not go through and do that, mindful of the content that we've got to get through in the compliance center. Okay, so that exact data matches is the other one that we've not touched on. I'll be brutally honest with you about exact data matches, in that I've not really played with these too much yet. They're a fairly recent addition to Compliance Center in Microsoft 365. My very good friend and co-host, organizer of the M365 security compliance user group, Alan Erdley, he has done a talk on exact data matches. He knows this inside out, so he can testify to this a lot better than I can at the moment. But in short, let's just describe what it does, as I've not played with this feature just yet. Exact data match allows you to create unique sensitive info types that use exact data values to detect matches instead of generic patterns. These sensitive info types will use things like regular expressions, dictionary keywords. These are going to be more exact info type based on that schema. So again, and this, I will certainly be doing this. You can learn more from the docs.com article that is linked from this feature, and there's info there on creating EDM sensitive information types as well. So that's data classification. We have a data connections section, or connectors, shall I say. And in here, we can get an overview of, when it loads, the connectors that are available to us within our Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. And this relates to third-party content, obviously, as you can immediately see. So we've got connectors here that they can choose and configure for things like Android, Cisco, Jabber, Facebook Business, all that sort of stuff, broken down by category. So instant messaging, social, HR, that sort of thing, Jive. And if you click into them, you can see the overview of them, what the benefits are. Jive is a document management and user-friendly collaboration tool. So how can this be used? It can be used to enhance the compliance solutions that support imported third-party data. So you get some documentation if you want to set up this connector to get compliance information relating to Jive in your Microsoft 365. Then you get some documentation linked here. You can go right to this documentation for setting up a connector to archive Jive data. So again, lots of great content and instructions on how to add this third-party stuff into Office 365. So that's an overview. If we go into connectors, it's not happy with me there for whatever reason, but we will ignore that. And loading. Come on, you can do it. Well, that basically shows the connectors. We can check back on that and see if that appears, but you get the idea. Now, alerts can be very powerful, very important. What we've got here is an alert which matches. We just take that down a bit, we can see exactly what this alert is doing. So a file containing PCI is being detected in the cloud in the built-in data loss prevention engine. It's been recorded as this level of severity, medium. It's a new alert. The category is DLP. The alerted entity is Megan Bowen, and the source of it is Microsoft Cloud App Security, and we can see the last activity on that as well. So if we click into that, we can get a bit more information on the alert, what it is, why it's there, the alert description, and then we can actually go straight to Cloud App Security from our compliance center and look further into that from the Cloud App Security portal. So very, very powerful stuff. Alerting is very, very cool. So here we can see that actual alert in Cloud App Security, and we can get more information on what that's all about. So what the file policy report was, and the users and all that good stuff, and we can choose what we want to do with that from there. So alerts, very, very cool. You can export them out and keep an eye on those. Very, very important. Reports. What we've got here is the ability to view the status and trends of, I really should have turned that email off, my apologies, for the compliance of your Microsoft 365 devices, data, identities, and et cetera, and in here we can get a card sort of snapshot view of how things are being applied, how labels are being applied across the tenant automatically, label auto apply, records tagging, label trends over the past 90 days for SharePoint, for OneDrive, for Exchange, the top 5 labels that have been used, retention label usage, a sensitivity label usage, and you can get a lot more information by clicking on all of these. Explore label activity, go to the AIP portal to see more information about all of these things that are available in the reports. So very, very powerful stuff. Policies, you can set up policies here to govern data, manage devices, and receive alerts about various activities in your organization. So the policies that you set up here for alerting, they will end up being shown in that alerts section that we just saw there. So we can see here that under policy type, we've got alerts, we've got Office 365 alert. Now this is going to take us actually into the older Security and Compliance Center in protection.office.com. This is an example of something that is still linking back to that center. So in time, it'll be fully ingested into the Compliance Center, but this is a good example of how it's still in the old experience at the moment. And in here, we can use the alert policies to track user and admin activities, malware threats, data loss in the organization, and we can create new alert policies based on what you need on terms of severity and the settings of the alert recipients and so on and so forth. So very, very cool stuff for alerts. So that's Office 365 alerts. Cloud App Security alerts. Again, if you click on this, it's going to take you right into Cloud App Security, and you can configure the alerts and the policies for alerts for Cloud App Security right in here as well, and have that integration with Cloud App Security, which is absolutely great. Then we've got some data policies. So policies for data loss prevention and retention. What this is going to do, it's going to take you into some of the features that are in the catalog that we'll get to very, very shortly. So if you click onto these, it'll open up the DLP solution. And the same would be true of the retention feature. And then finally, there's the access policies. Now this is going to link you to conditional access in the Azure AD portal to set up the terms of use for your organization for conditional access. So here you can set up the terms of use for your organization to give that a name and a display name. The terms of use document can be uploaded from here. You can browse to upload it, set the default language, and then set some criteria for when this and how this is going to apply. Require the users to expand the terms of use when they're carrying out certain functions, and require users to consent, etc., etc. Policies, very, very powerful stuff. Now we get on to permissions now. These relate to admin roles, which give users permission to view data and complete tasks in the Compliance Center. So these are broken down here into the roles for Azure AD roles, which you can use to view and manage Azure AD roles to perform tasks, and then the specific Compliance Center roles. And the two that we needed earlier in the Compliance Manager section, I believe it was, if we look in here, we should be able to find those in here. And it was Content List, Content Explorer List Viewer, and there's another one, Content Explorer Content Viewer. Those were the ones. So so these are specific Compliance Center roles, not Azure AD rules. There's a big difference. And what you can do is you can edit these role groups and grant memberships to them. What I would need to do to get access to that feature that I didn't have earlier on would be to grant my user account the a membership of these roles, so I could add in the MOD administrator right at the top of the list there, and that would do the trick. That would give me that full access to that content that I couldn't get previously. So roles and permissions, very important. Make sure that you're granting the right roles to the right people, and that you are reviewing those on a regular basis. The Azure AD roles, I'm sure many of you will be familiar with these. These are the things like the global administrator, which is the account that can do anything in Azure AD and Office 365, compliance data administrator. These are all roles that can be used to perform various tasks at various levels within the Compliance Center, but are Azure AD pure roles. So that is the, and I've switched off again, I do apologize. That's a quick sort of review of those sections there. So what we'll do now is we'll have a quick look through some of the solutions, and what I'll focus on is some of the ones that I use mostly on a day-to-day basis in terms of compliance, the ones that are the most common ones that I would set up for my customers. And you can find these all in the catalog. You can find them further down in the menu as well under different sections. Microsoft, as I say, are very good at providing different ways of getting to the same content in their portals, but everything's in the solution catalog here under different sections, starting with information protection and governance. And here we can see the DLP section, information governance sections, and information protection sections. Let's have a quick look into DLP. If we open that up, we can actually pin that to the navigation as well. It's actually already pinned in this case, but we could remove it if we wanted to do the opposite. So here we get a quick overview of data loss prevention, which is basically designed to prevent the accidental sharing of content from your Microsoft 365 services to people who should not be consuming that content. So things like the sensitive information types that we saw earlier on in the settings above. So, and this is all controlled with policies. So we can create some policies for how that's going to apply. And we've got a couple of example ones already built into this demo tenant here for US financial data and GDPR for European data protection regulations. So let's just take a look and see what this US financial data one is doing. If we click on it, we get a very quick descriptions for where it's going to apply, what it's going to do. So it's going to apply to these locations. If we want to edit it, we can edit the policy, and we can get a very, very, very deep look at the settings that are going to apply and how. So, and we can filter these down. So we can filter the Exchange email content down by distribution group to include or exclude them. Same with SharePoint sites and OneDrive accounts, Teams chat and channel messages. And more recently, there have been other things added to DLP as well. You may have heard about Endpoint Dlp as one of the more recent additions to the DLP capabilities of Microsoft 365, where you can now apply it to devices. So so we toggle that on. We can choose users or groups to exclude or include, and you can do that on the device level as well. And also cloud app security. We can choose instances of cloud app security now as well to apply DLP, and on-premises repositories too. Most DLP rules, when you set them up, have low volume and high volume of detected content, and what that means basically is, well, if we very quickly edit this low volume of content, at the very top there you'll see instance count. So low volume content of credit card numbers detected, bank account numbers detected. These are the sensitive info types that this policy will detect. Low volume will be between 1 and 9 instances of that detected in a document or an email, and then the resulting occurrences will trigger this low volume policy, in which it'll have a lesser effect, shall we say. It's not as strict. There'll be some user notifications. There'll be a severity level set to low, for example. It's less aggressive, whereas the higher volume of content detected, if we quickly look at that, it's going to do a bit more. It's going to restrict access and block everyone. You can do encryption, more user notifications. You can set user overrides if users are allowed to override the DLP tip that they'll see as a result of this policy match, and then ask them to add a justification into that as well. So lots of really good settings that you can apply with DLP policies, and when they apply, actually I'll not come out of that just yet. The really good thing about DLP policies is that you have these options here to adopt a crawl, then walk, then run approach, which I highly recommend when you're implementing DLP. Test it out first. Always do it. Never do this. Never do turn it on right away. Always test it out first without policy tips. Have a look in the alerts in the audit logs of Microsoft 365 to see what would happen when there's a policy match. Then, when you're happy as an admin, show some policy tips that the end users will see in their applications to train them to know what to do when there's a policy match. They'll be able to respond to that. They'll know that they shouldn't be sharing this content. There's a credit card number in your document. You may not want to do this. If we may allow you to override it. If there is an override available to you, we'll ask you for a justification, or we may be quite aggressive with our policy. We might not allow you. We might simply not allow you to do it. So that'll get them used to the policy tips. Training the users, making them aware on these features is critical to the success of the rollout of features like DLP. So never turn it on right away. Only get to this point when you've got through these 2 stages. So very important. I can't emphasize that enough. So again, we've got some stuff on alerts here. We'll be able to see some of the alerts on the policy matches if they come up. The Endpoint Dlp settings, this relate to within the policies, the device selection that you saw there that we could toggle on, and you can configure more sections in here, like adding file path exclusions on Windows device locations, for example. Choose some settings on unallowed apps. Bluetooth apps, browser and domain restrictions, some additional settings for Endpoint Dlp here. There's some stuff on business justification here for the Endpoint Dlp and in terms of policy tips, and auditing file activity for devices. So a lot of controls there over what you can and can't do for DLP. Okay, so let's go back to the catalog. That's DLP. And information governance and information protection. I'd really like to get through these ones particularly before we wind up, and we'll see what we have left time to go through. But information governance, we can open up that solution, and this is going to give us a ton of great stuff. In here, we've got labels, retention labels specifically, and label policies. Now, a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between retention labels and retention policies? Well, retention labels will get applied to the item level. They will be applied to the document or to the email at that level, whereas the retention policies are applied at the service level to Exchange Online, mailbox, to the SharePoint Online site, shall we say. So that's the difference. And there's no correlation between retention policies and retention labels at this time. They're completely unrelated. So, but they both do the same thing essentially. they will put settings in place to retain or delete content based on the settings of your label. So if we look at this example one here, this PII retention policy, we can edit that and see exactly what it's doing. What are the retention settings? So this particular example here, when this label is applied to items, we're going to ask to retain the item for a specific period, in this case 7 years. What do we want to do at the end of that retention period? Do we want to delete the items automatically, do nothing, or trigger a disposition review? Disposition reviews are very, very useful for records managers in that what that will allow them to do is rather than do nothing or the items are deleted, a reviewer can go in and have a look and decide what needs to be done with that content. So retention labels, very, very powerful indeed. I suggest that you think about them, how you could apply them in your organization. They can also be used with really cool features like SharePoint syntax to automate content understanding and knowledge processing. I've done some sessions on that as well, which I'm sure you can find around the web if you look for them, but lots of good stuff you can do with retention labels. And these are applied with label policies. Once you've got your labels, you can publish them and put all the labels into policies and then apply them to your users. Retention policies, the same sort of principle. You can create the policies to let's very quickly test there, to choose to retain content for certain locations, Exchange Mail, SharePoint, OneDrive groups, all that sort of stuff, and include and exclude stuff as well. What you'll notice as well in here, this is key, is that Teams is included in the ability to retain content in Microsoft 365. But look what happens when you select the Teams channel messages or Teams chats. The other ones are automatically toggled off. So Teams workloads cannot exist. They cannot coexist in the same workloads in a retention policy. You have to have a unique retention policy for Teams content there. How Teams is used for compliance is a whole nother conversation, which I don't want to get into the weeds of that, but very important to be aware of that. But same sort of principles, retain content for a period of time based on when created or when modified, and then what do you want to do. But with policies, you can't do the disposition review. There's lesser choices here. You can delete items automatically or do nothing, or retain items forever, or and don't over retain as well. I can't emphasize that strongly enough. Know what your responsibilities are as an organization. And I'm so sorry I keep doing that. I keep on going off onto the other screen. Back to the solutions catalog. I'm very, very
About 5 minutes left.
That we're getting quite close. Thank you, Heather. We're getting there. So if we go into the catalog, information protection. I really want to have a look at information protection because it's one of my very, very favorite things in Microsoft 365. And this also consists of labels and label policies, and sensitivity labels and label policies. They can also be applied to the item level, such as the email or the document, or to the container level, to things like Teams and SharePoint sites and Microsoft 365 groups. So there's that same possibility that you got with retention labels and retention policies, but in a slightly different way of working. But what these will do is you can create labels which, when published to your users, and you can publish different sets to different sets of users, so they can then classify content in their emails, in their documents to be public or general or confidential, highly confidential. And then the result of that label being applied is that that document, that email, can only be accessed by somebody who is authorized for that label. So if it's sent outside of the business, if it's sent to an external party, if they don't have an Office 365 account in this organization that's authorized for that, then they're not going to be able to get into that. And that protection, it doesn't matter if it travels with the document. If somebody takes an encrypted document, a document encrypted by information protection in this way, by a sensitivity label, they put it on a USB stick and they try and open it on a machine that doesn't have an account that's valid for it, they're not going to get into that document. So this is the power of Azure Information Protection or Microsoft Information Protection. A couple of things here. You have to explicitly turn it on so it can encrypt content in the online versions and stored in OneDrive and SharePoint. So you can turn that on here. Very easy to do. And also, I did mention that you can apply it to the container level now for teams, for SharePoint sites, for groups. A bit trickier to do that still at the moment. You can't do that from within the GUI environment now just yet. I imagine that will come. It'll be a quick turn on now button, but right now you have to go into the PowerShell to explicitly enable that. But creating a label, it's nice and simple. You can give that label a nice friendly name. We can call that public. We can give it the same name there. Put in a description. We'll just put that in just for ease. A description for users, a description for admins, useful to have. How is this label going to be scoped? What's it going to apply to? Well, there's only one option here. We can apply it to files and emails in this case because we've not explicitly enabled the groups and sites feature for container level protection using sensitivity labels. That would have to be enabled by the PowerShell, so that would be ungrayed out there. Azure Purview Assets is a preview feature, hasn't been around too long. You have to turn that on as well. And that will enable you to apply the label to assets in Azure Purview, including SQL columns and Azure Blob Storage and so on and so forth. So, but what a label can do a couple of things. Well, actually, it doesn't have to do anything. You can happily create the label and have it do nothing. It can just be a label. Or if you want it to do something, there are two things it can do. It can encrypt files and emails. So if you click that, it's going to encrypt your content. It can also provide content marking, headers, footers, watermarks to the content. And if you select those selections, you then go through and you can configure those encryption settings. You can assign the encryption settings centrally, or you can set it so the users can choose those settings themselves. You can choose the if and when the content expires, whether there's offline access. And here's where you assign those permissions. Who's going to be able to access the content where this label is applied? That's where you're going to assign those permissions. You can also now use double key encryption as well. If you are an organization that, for regulatory reasons, you have to have your own key, manage your own key. There are some misconceptions about what that means. Some people think that means that Microsoft cannot access your data. Not the case. It's just the fact that you have to hold your own key. So you can learn more there about that capability. And I've not assigned the necessary groups, but you can go through that wizard, apply some content marking, watermarks, and all that good stuff. Apply it to groups and sites. You have a nice label created. When you've got that label there, you can publish them much in the same way as retention labels. Choose the labels to publish into a policy, and then assign them to users. They're going to get a nice sensitivity bar in there, Office applications to be able to apply them. And they can, if you have E5 licensing or Azure Information Protection P2 licensing, which I'm not sure if you can still get it as a standalone. It seems to come and go. But that will enable you to auto label. Very important, again, that distinction that a manual labeling available, whatever license you've got. But if you want to auto label, you've got to have that E5 labeling or some version of it. So that's the information protection. We talked a little bit about records management, which is goes a bit deeper into the abilities of retention labels and allows records managers to do more with disposition reviews on if that's selected for retention label policies. So just glancing at the time, 53, and I've got to stop doing that. Insider risk management, really cool features of insider risk management. We've got some communication compliance features that are now available to Microsoft 365 customers. Minimize communication risk by helping you automatically capture inappropriate messages. Insider risk management, this is a really big thing. This will help organizations to protect against malicious insiders or departing users from extracting data from the organization, trying to take information that doesn't belong to them. So you can go into the policies there and create policies to for things like data theft, security policy violations, data leaks, and apply to users and groups, and then choose the triggers for when and how that will get applied. So lots of cool stuff there for communication compliance and insider risk. Communication compliance, I think we've already touched on a wee bit in terms of this is for the policies for things like the offensive language, sensitive info, regulatory compliance, that sort of thing. And let's just go down. Discover and respond. Auditing in the Compliance Center, this records user and admin activity from your organization. So if we open the audit log, really powerful here. We can search the audit log in Microsoft 365 for all sorts of activities. If we drill down in here, we can look for all sorts of content relating to files and an email, and when a file was uploaded, and add a site in there, but a user, date ranges, and search for that auditing content to be compliant and for investigations. You can set audit retention policies as well. You can create audit specific retention policies here as well. And you can set these for a duration of, depending on your licensing, up to 10 years. You've got to have the E5 licensing to have that 10-year retention there. So really, really cool stuff in auditing. E-discovery, I think we'll have a very, very brief amount of time to just touch on e-discovery, which is basically a means of searching for content within Office 365 locations for investigations, legal investigations, compliance investigations, internal investigations, all manner of investigations. And you can search, you can create cases in here for your e-discovery obligations. Go and create a case. I'm going to just call that test and just give you an idea of what that looks like. And if we go into that, we can create searches. Content search is part of e-discovery, so you can do a search of Teams, for example, and then search the locations. And I put Teams in there, but for Teams, you would actually search Exchange mailboxes for one-to-one chats in Teams, or you would search group mailboxes for group chats. Files would be in SharePoint sites. So, and then put, and you've got to select at least one of these to proceed. You can put content on hold. You can search for keywords and then execute your search. So there's loads of great things you can do there. See what content is on hold, create new holds, run your searches, export them, and that's just core e-discovery. Fairly basic, really, in the extent that you can do searches for content in emails and Teams chats, but you can only see the item level in the exports, in the results. With advanced e-discovery, you can go a lot further and create cases and extract content and reconstruct full conversations. So you can see if there was a chat in Teams between several users, you could do a search for that in an advanced e-discovery case, and then the results you'd be able to see and export and mark up those results and with advanced e-discovery. So and that really is a very quick bullet point whistle stop tour of the Compliance Center and the main things that I use it for on a day-to-day basis. The only other thing I've not really touched on is data subject requests, which for GDPR gives people, also known as data subjects, the right to their personal data. So you can, much like content search, though it's another variation on content search, you can create cases there, put the name of the person you want to search for content for, and then search for that and then get the results. So lots and lots of great stuff in the Compliance Center. I'll level with you. This is the first time I've delivered this session, and I must admit, I thought I could probably cram more into this period of time than I ultimately have. So I hope it's been useful in some way. It's been very, very high level, a very quick overview of what's in there. I am always available to talk on Twitter, on LinkedIn, through my blogs. I'm not hard to find. So if you want to learn more about compliance, I've got a ton of stuff out there that I can share with you. And I'm always happy to talk. So please do get in touch if you need to. And that is me. That is me done. That was pretty ferocious, I realize. So thanks for bearing with me.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for that. We are all out of time. The next session is coming in right now. But thank you again.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I overran.
That's okay.